Thank you. Good morning, everybody. The time being 9 a.m., I'd like to call today's Judicial and Public Safety Committee meeting to order. It is Thursday, March 11th. My name is Myrna Molina, and I will be chairing today's meeting. First item would be roll call.
Brown.
Here.
Gums.
Gums here.
Leonard.
Leonard here.
Sanchez.
Here.
Shepro. Davist.
Davist here.
Molina present. Thank you.
Thank you. Now our next item on the agenda would be approval of minutes for February 11th. We all received our minutes yesterday. If anybody has any corrections or anything they'd like to add, please let us know. Otherwise, if everybody is okay with approving the minutes, I'd like to take the roll on that authorization.
Davist moves.
Davist moves. Who was
Shepro
second?
seconds.
Shepro second. Roll call, please.
Brown.
Yes.
Gums.
Yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
Davist.
Davist, yes.
Approved.
Thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda would be our public comment. Did we have anybody signed up for public comment, or is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. We all received our financial reports. They are attached. So if there's any questions on that, otherwise we can move on. Okay, thank you. Good morning. Next item on the agenda would be Ms. Guthrie for CaneCom.
Yes, good morning. Our monthly reports are in the packet. A couple things to highlight. We continue with our hiring process. We have a couple telecommunicators in training. We are also very focused on our Motorola Starcom project. The implementation of the councils is happening this week. We anticipate that they will go live next week, and then we will move on to different steps in the process. I will be happy to answer any questions anybody has about the monthly reports.
Any questions for Ms. Guthrie? Okay, go ahead and introduce the resolution, and then I'll ask for a motion and second.
Yes, thank you. We do have a couple of resolutions, on the agenda this month. Our first is proclaiming National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week. It is every year, the first full week of April, and this celebrates the hard work of our team that they do every day. So this is just recognition.
Wonderful. And may I have a motion made by Ms. Gums, second?
Leonard seconds.
Second by Mr. Leonard. And may I have a roll call approval on that, please?
Brown.
Yes.
Gums.
Gums, yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
Davist.
Davist, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And there is a
I didn't
second
hear
resolution.
myself. I didn't hear myself called.
I'm sorry, Mr. Shepro. Mr. Shepro.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Shepro. Okay, and then we have a second resolution. Ms. Guthrie, go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Our second resolution is the MOUs for the sharing of talk groups for programming of our portable and more mobile radios on the Starcom system. As a requirement of the Motorola system, these MOUs are needed to program neighboring agencies' talk groups into the radios. This has no cost associated with it. It is just, the template is included within the packet. I expect that all these MOUs will look almost exactly the same. We did work with Megan Baxter from the State's Attorney's Office and appreciate her help on this process.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion and second to discuss?
Sanchez moves.
Sanchez moves, Gums seconds. Any questions or discussion related to this resolution? Okay, hearing and seeing none, may I please have a roll call?
Brown.
Yes.
Gums.
Gums, yes.
Leonard.
Leonard, yes.
Sanchez.
Yes.
Shepro.
Shepro, yes.
Davist.
Davis, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Guthrie.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So moving on, we have our sheriff, Sheriff Hayne. You can please go ahead with your monthly report.
Morning, everybody. On the rare occasion, I'm saving everyone PowerPoint just to breeze through and get out of the way of the state's attorney. I don't want to interrupt her ever. I do want to note that for National Public Safety Telecommunicators Week in that resolution, the fine print also said you have to send them lunch. So please help out with that one. On the corrections side of the house, by the way, happy COVID anniversary, everybody. It's weird to think about a year ago what we were talking about and going through and everything that has transpired. So this team's been awesome to work with back then and all the way through till now. So thank you for that and happy anniversary. We're currently holding in our jail 44 Department of Corrections sentenced detainees. I know the state's attorney and I are going to meet next week about next steps forward, but we continue to arm wrestle with Department of Corrections to get our people in there. Remember, that's about 70 to 75 bucks a day per person that we're having to foot the bill for. This is an entire cell block actually that we could shut down if we didn't have these people in our jail. So we're trying to figure out how we can manage this as fast as possible and move them along. Thank God for electronic monitoring. We have 52 people on it now. That's jumped up in just 1 month from 35. So I embrace the courts embracing electronic monitoring. The bond call judge and Clint Hall have been outstanding in helping us push this ball forward. So thank you for that. As you may recall, we did reinstate the Marshals prisoner contract at the end of last year. Because of the big C word, we still have not gotten any of their detainees in-house for their reasons and our reasons. We're shooting for a May 1st start date. Now that we've had all our detainees vaccinated, our staff vaccinated, both sides are comfortable with kicking that in. So we're anxious to start that. Exciting news out of our recovery pod. We continue to report on the fact that if you are incarcerated and left untreated with an opioid dependency, you're 74 times more likely to overdose and die upon release. So out of recovery pod, actually out of our entire jail, in 2017, we had 11 people come through our jail and overdose and die in the community. In 2018, that number went up to 15 people came through and overdose and died. 2019 is when we started recovery pod and the medically assisted treatment. We had 2 people that came through, overdosed and died. And then in 2020, we just got the data from the coroner's office to match up with our jail population. 1 person came through and overdosed and died. So that's an 89% drop off in overdose deaths on the opioid dependent. So incredibly proud of that. Piggybacking on that, you may have heard a podcast that the sheriff, we've been doing down a recovery pod. It's called A Sheriff and His Inmates for about a year now. Group out of LA that sells documentaries to Hulu and Netflix picked up on it, and they're doing some filming inside the Kane County Jail. So on the recovery pod program. So if you see film crews, that's going to be, actually it started this morning and running through the end of the month. So that's the reason for that. Public safety side, the return of the Chicago burglary and vehicle theft crews has started again. So we saw a lull in February, probably due to the weather that kept them out of our area overnight, but they just hit in the Mill Creek neighborhood and a neighborhood just down the road. One of our deputies did an outstanding job in locating them right after they had stolen a brand new BMW out of somebody's driveway that they left unlocked with the keys in it, despite how much we talk about that. And they did get in a pursuit that went all the way down 47 to 88, and then they terminated based on speed due to their safety. So we're setting up some out-of-the-box thinking initiatives to help catch these guys in the meantime. On our vaccination clinics that we've been running, we've given out over 800 doses to this point. We did just start mobile clinics this week as more of a pilot. So we went down to Aurora Township and vaccinated 25 seniors, moved on to a senior mobile home park in Montgomery, vaccinated another 32 seniors at that location. So we're just showing how we can use this as a model to help vaccinate certain demographics that may not be as mobile or, due to income level may not have transportation. So we look forward to shifting into a new mode here as the mass vaccination clinics are being discussed and supporting those operations throughout Kane. One thing I just want to put on the radar of judicial public safety is we've been asked at the Sheriff's Office to give a review of what it would look like if we enveloped the Forest Preserve Police Department. On first look, we would save them and the county and our taxpayers about $460,000 annually by doing this. So stay tuned as the conversations and presentations continue. And Madam Chairwoman, I'm ready to move on to the resolutions.
Thank you, Sheriff Hain. Please go ahead and introduce the first resolution.
Sure, we introduced this at admin yesterday. So this is the purchase of 10 replacement vehicles for the Sheriff's Office. Really excited that we were able to work with County Finance, and not only were we able to allocate the funds to get us up to speed this year with this last purchase, we also have the funds in place for next year. So we won't have to come back and ask for more money. You'll just see a resolution saying, hey, we're going to shift that to buy these cars.
Leonard moves.
Is there a second?
Brown seconds.
Mr. Brown seconds. Any questions or discussion regarding this resolution?
Madam Chair.
Excuse me.
Mr. Shepro, go ahead.
Sheriff, is this, how does this ask relate to what has traditionally been done? In other words, do you feel that you're behind in being able to replace cars, or is this pretty much the schedule that's been used in the past?
So this is the schedule that was used, I would say, before the last administration. The last administration had the public safety sales tax that is normally used to pay for squad cars moved away from that opportunity. So they were using, other sources of general fund or coming here and asking for reserve funding to purchase vehicles, and they were being replaced at a very low rate. So less than 5 per year when we need them replaced at 10 to 12 per year. So now we're back on track. We are still using out-of-the-box thinking when it comes to funds. So the money being used in this specific purchase is coming from the inappropriation of the children's waiting room fund from the court security budget. So we moved that over to the vehicle purchase fund to make this year happen, and then set aside for next year to do the same.
Thank you.
amount. You're welcome.
Madam Chair, this is Leonard. Could I make a comment on this?
Please, Mr. Leonard, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say that in the past on the Judicial and Public Safety Committee meetings, the past administration, as Sheriff Hain had mentioned, was asking for 5 new vehicles pretty much on an annual basis, and there was no funding for that. What Sheriff Hain has done and continues to do and will do in the future, as he just mentioned, is fund 10 additional vehicles, which is needed to keep us up to speed, and have that all funded and prepared for without asking for any additional monies from our general fund or any other source. So I think, once again, this is an example of not only budgeting and handling your finances properly on an annual basis, but also looking forward to make sure that we don't have new unexpected expenses down the road. So I thank Sheriff Hain for his financial management here.
Thank you. Any further questions or discussion? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Madam Clerk, can you please call the roll regarding this resolution?
Yes. Brown,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Shepro,
Shepro, yes.
Gavest.
Davis, yes.
Thank you. Passes.
Thank you. And Sheriff Hain, can you please introduce your next resolution, please?
Certainly. So as we continue to tear down our budgetary silos on the public safety side and examining what we can do to help out other offices in the county, just like we moved last month, the state's attorney is in need of a pre-arrest diversion manager, which will truly serve public safety across Kane as we pilot a pre-arrest diversion program alongside Elgin Police Department. So it'll be Kane County Sheriff's Office and Elgin Police Department running this pilot program. And we're moving $50,000 from our court security budget to the state's attorney's office so she can acquire that person.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion and a second to discuss?
Davis moves.
Mr. Davis
Gums will
moves
second.
and Ms. Gums seconds. Okay, any questions or discussion regarding this resolution?
Question, Shepro?
Mr. Shepro, go ahead.
Yes. Once again, I think we could commend the sheriff for his ingenuity and public spiritedness in helping with this. My question is, this is a one-time transfer, I believe. That's sort of a question and a statement. And is anybody in a position to address how this position might be funded after this budget year?
So yes, Jamie Mosser. The idea behind the pre-arrest diversion program is much like our current deferred prosecution programs, where there are program fees that are associated with that. As a result of it, you start to bring in some revenue that we did not have before. As we show the success of this, we're able to apply for different programs and grant funding, including deflection money that has been offered through the state of Illinois and particularly highlighted in our new crime bill. Because again, the idea is to get people out of the criminal justice system. So what we need now is just to start the program, to be able to show the need that we have in our community, to show how it's working. Besides the program fees, we're pretty confident that we're going to be able to get funding, grant funding, to continue to support this program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And Mr.
Thank
Shepro,
you,
this is Sheriff
Sheriff.
Hain again, just to add to the sustainability, we're wanting to back up that funding with our court security budget going forward, as court operations have truly changed, and we need much less operating cost or much less operating funds in our court security budget. We're comfortable going forward, helping the state's attorney along with her salary, both the $115,000 one we did earlier and this salary as well.
Thank you.
Bates, please.
Bates, please
Madam
go
Chair.
ahead.
So I don't know what pre-arrest means. What is this program, please?
So what it means is that when an officer encounters a person who is committing a crime, instead of placing the person under arrest, bringing them to the jail, and then there's a case number associated and they have to go through the court system, instead they're going to be given the option to participate in this program. So they are then referred to the case manager. The case manager essentially walks them through the program and puts them under a contract. The contract is not admitting to anything or even talking about the facts of the crime that's alleged, but instead it's talking about why the criminal behavior is occurring, insofar as we're looking for addiction issues, mental health issues, lack of resources such as homelessness. The case manager then works with that particular individual to refer them to treatment in our community, as well as other resources. So the case manager then is compiling a list of the organizations that can help provide somebody access to job training or to finding a job, to different housing opportunities if homelessness is an issue. And we already have great communication with our treatment providers for both addiction issues and mental health issues, that again, we're just getting them to treatment quicker without the stigma of having to arrest somebody and essentially criminalizing addiction issues, mental health issues, or lack of resources.
That sounds like a great program. I would think that everybody could benefit from that list when we're trying to help our constituents.
Absolutely. So this is something that we're going to take the Yemen's work and trying to update and keep going. It's something that we will make public to everyone, so that if you're in Aurora, you know exactly where you can go. If you're in Elgin, you'll know that. So that is something we're willing to share.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair, this is Leonard. Could I just make one comment about this resolution?
Absolutely, Mr. Leonard, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to mention that in the resolution, it's stated as a position of pre-arrest division manager, and I think it should read diversion manager. It's in a couple of spots, so if we could just make that small change.
Yes, absolutely. Do we need to make, I think it's just a clerical error, so I see, okay. Yeah, so I'm sure we will correct that, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions?
Sanchez.
Mr. Sanchez, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. State's Attorney Mosser, what would you say to the people who would look at this program and think, well, if somebody does the crime, they should do the time? You know, we're not going to arrest them and put them in jail. We're going to put them back out on the streets to just commit more crime.
So essentially, these are the people we're doing that with, but through the criminal justice system, where they're being arrested, they're going to court, and then we're putting them in a deferred prosecution program anyway, because we recognize the fact that they have addiction issues or mental health or lack of resources. Essentially, what we're doing is we're getting them to treatment or to resources quicker, and we are not putting the stigma of the arrest on them. For any person who has ever had to be in that situation, having handcuffs put on them, especially if they have mental health issues, or if they have an addiction issue that they haven't been able to get under control yet, you're just adding to the stress, you're adding to the suffering that they already have. So what we're doing is we're just taking that portion out and really allowing them to take accountability, which is being a part of this program, because they know that if they ultimately fail to participate in this program, then the charges will eventually be filed. So I think it's an antiquated way of thinking when people believe that somehow just putting them into the system is the right thing. We need to do something better. I would probably ask that our public defender, Ms. Conan, talk about that, because she's the person who talks on a daily basis to these individuals who get arrested. And I'm sure she has hundreds of stories about how just the arrest alone affected the person and maybe even made it more difficult for them to obtain a job or to even complete what it is that we ask them to complete in the criminal justice system.
Thank you. So it reduces crime, essentially.
It's my belief, yes.
Madam Chair, Shepro?
Mr. Shepherd, I believe Ms. Gums had a comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Please grant me the grace here. I'm going to speak about a personal issue. My brother, Michael Gums, was a police officer for the Aurora Police Department for 18 years. He was involved in a car accident, broke his neck, got addicted to pain medication. And long and short of that story is he ended up in jail, and he lost every single thing he had: his house, his family, sometimes me. Had these programs been available to him at that time, my brother would not be in the position that he is in today. Although he is doing great, he works for a gas station because he has a criminal record that he cannot overcome, because these programs then were not available to him. I personally support this with my whole heart. And I can't keep talking about it, so thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gums. We all appreciate your sharing your story. Mr. Shepro, did you have a comment or question?
Yes. So when people have asked me about this program, and sort of playing off of what Mr. Sanchez said, could our assembled group here maybe just walk us through the moment that this gets implemented? In other words, nobody is going to be, I imagine, walking the streets looking for people that they think are about to commit crimes. So the non-arrest diversion, I think, would then occur at the moment that you might otherwise be making an arrest. And I just wonder if maybe the sheriff could walk us through how would that actually occur when an incident has happened that might otherwise result in arrest? What would be the sequence, I guess?
So from the street side, right now, when we're confronted with somebody who could be criminally charged, we have two options, right? We could put them in handcuffs and take them to jail, or we could use officer discretion and let them walk away with zero repercussion.
Yeah.
This still wraps them with some sort of repercussion, we'll call it, and with that contract, and ensures that they will receive that supportive care that we are now offering. Everything from our diversion team at the sheriff's office that provides employment and counseling to people, to whatever parameters Ms. Moster would like to wrap around them as well. So there are so many people that we come in contact with during the course of our duties that don't necessarily need to get brought into the facility, but they need some sort of redirection, and that's exactly what this accomplishes.
What kind of additional training do you think it will be necessary for any of the officers who would be implementing this program to know how and when to use this additional option?
Yeah, this is a model that's built out of Seattle, Washington, and it's the LEAD model, LEAD. So our officers, our deputies would have to go through LEAD training, as well as I assume the state's attorney is going to put her staff through that. So Jamie can probably talk more to the extent of the training and what sort of certification it requires.
So essentially, the training that's provided through the LEAD system in Seattle just helps the officers to identify different types of crimes, because essentially all they're looking for is low-level nonviolent offenses. And the next step that the officer looks at once you identify that crime is this related to something regarding mental health, drug addiction, or lack of resources? The next step that the officer has to go in to see if there's any type of a victim that's involved. And when I say victim, the cases that we're looking at is something like a retail theft. An individual goes into the store to steal something because they can sell this, then they can use the money from that to buy drugs. We would have a restorative justice aspect of it that we at the state's attorney's office would take on with that particular store to make sure that they understand what it is that we're doing. And this person, again, takes accountability to that particular store or victim in that case. So it's not a significant amount of training. It's more an identification of potential crimes, a look at what is underlying that, which Sheriff Hain can very adequately state that their officers can recognize that pretty readily in terms of cases. And then obviously there's that victim portion of it where we want to make sure that the community understands that people will take accountability for issues that involve somebody or make somebody a victim of a crime.
Is this something that when it's ready to go would be system-wide, or will it be as people become trained, they will be implementing this and others will presumably participate as they get whatever training they need?
So it's going to go on a department by department basis. We're starting with the Sheriff's Department because obviously Sheriff Hain has shown that he is very progressive in terms of his look at criminal behavior. And we're also starting with the Elgin Police Department because they've taken a similar philosophy and they've actually already dedicated a unit to do pre-arrest diversion. And we're going to be able to come in and do our side of it to supplement what it is that they're doing. So as we show the efficiency and the efficacy of this program in the Sheriff's Department and in Elgin, we're going to start presenting it to our other police departments. And again, the training is not significant. It really is officer-led. So if you have officers that are really invested in doing this, you're going to see more referrals from them versus officers who may not have that belief or have the belief that Mr. Sanchez had stated that somehow if you do the crime, you have to do the time.
So if I could, this isn't a perfect analogy, but it strikes me that this is a little like the county's comprehensive land use plan. We can design it, we can set it up, but we have to then sell it to our municipal entities to get them to buy into the whole concept.
Yes, I do think though it's going to be an easy sale once we show how efficient this program is with Elgin and with the Sheriff's Department.
Thank you for all of you for those explanations.
And Madam Chair, I don't know if it's possible for Ms. Conan to talk from the perspective of some of her clients. I had mentioned that earlier, but I think that she's in the best position to show or to really describe how the criminal system affects individuals that we're talking about.
Absolutely, go ahead.
Thank you. I would agree with everything that the sheriff and Ms. Mosser have indicated. Being from the other side where we see those people once they have had the arrest, and especially for our clients where they are living paycheck to paycheck, they have jobs that don't provide for time off. So even one night in jail completely upends their life. If they lose their job, that is a spiral effect that then they lose their housing, they lose their cell phone. At that point, they are then homeless, and unfortunately, then the cycle of crime continues. We see so many of our clients that come in with addiction issues and mental health issues. If these issues could, if we had the ability to get to them right from the beginning, I think that there are many people that we could turn around and would not see back in the system again. So I truly believe in this program, and I think based upon the research, it is supported that if you can save that night in jail, that you really are saving the person all the way around. Thank you.
Question for the public defender.
Sure.
So if this program's implemented and it is pre-arrest, would that mean that your office would not be involved in a particular incident as long as it's on track for the fully implementing the diversion program?
My understanding of the program would be, yes, that we would not take part in those cases. The only way that then we would get the cases, unfortunately, is if someone was not able to successfully complete the program and the case ended up in the criminal system.
So that would be a significant saving in just logging in a case for your office.
It would, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion regarding this resolution? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Brown,
Yes.
Gums,
An absolute yes.
Leonard,
Yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Shepro,
Shepro, yes.
Davis.
Davis, yes.
Approved. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Sheriff Hayne, we can move on to your third resolution.
This one's pretty simple.
Mm.
I think my mic's back on now. This one's pretty simple. It's the continuation of Jody Canicula. I'm sorry, I always pronounce it wrong. Canicula on the Merit Commission for another 4-year term.
Davis moves.
Mr.
Second,
Davis
Shepro.
moves. Mr. Shepro seconds. Any questions or comments? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Brown,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Shepro,
Shepro, yes.
Davis.
Davis, yes.
Thank you. Approved.
Thank you. Thank you, Sheriff Hayne. Okay,
Madam
next
Chair?
item, Mr. Shepro.
I
Go ahead.
just had one quick question for the sheriff on one of his earlier presentation on grievances.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it showed, Sheriff, you had, I think, like 337 grievances in the month. And I just wondered, what is the current number ballpark of actually pending grievances? In other words, what's the total in the system?
Mr. Shepard, was that the jail activity report? I think that was the first. Okay,
Yes.
so that's grievances that are posted by detainees to our command staff.
Right.
It could be anything from, I need more toilet paper, to I need to go see the doctor. They're just all labeled grievances. So that's just a number of how many that they field on a monthly basis.
Okay, that was going to be my question. I think that answers it. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item on our agenda is our state's attorney, Ms. Mosser. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. I would also like to ask that an investigation occur into how the sheriff was put before me on this, as I used to be first. With that being said, we have attached our resolutions, and so we'll go through those one at a time. I do have a very, very brief PowerPoint presentation just to highlight again what we had discussed before. It is a pared down discussion of the smaller amount that we're asking for.
Ms. Mosser, just to be clear, that is the same sheriff that just handed money over, right?
Yes, I do know that I mock him even though he keeps giving me money. No, that's okay.
Okay, so you're introducing the resolution. No questions on monthly report for state's attorney? Okay. Do I have a motion and a second to discuss and potentially approve a resolution for state's attorney?
Sanchez moves.
Leonard seconds.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Ms. Masser, were you introducing the resolutions?
Yes, and
Okay.
so I do have a PowerPoint that's up now, if we can go to the next slide. Again, just going quickly, I'm highlighting the numbers again as to why we're asking for increased funding for our domestic violence and abuse and neglect divisions. As I discussed in detail during the last time, you saw that these were the only cases that went up in numbers, whereas every other case went significantly down. We've already started to see in 2021 in our domestic violence cases, our felony strangulation cases seem to be on the rise as well. So this again is another terrifying statistic that we're starting to look at in terms of how COVID continues to affect domestic violence and abuse and neglect cases. Next slide. Our first resolution then specifically deals with the domestic violence and abuse and neglect. We currently have 4 felony attorneys who are carrying about a caseload of 130 files each. We also have 3 misdemeanor attorneys who are carrying about 800 cases apiece. We have 1.5 advocates for that unit who then have to obviously supplement all of those cases. We have a victim's bill of rights that requires every single victim in a case to be contacted or attempted to contact because they have a right to participate in the cases. And we have 2 full-time support staff that do those matters. Our proposal then is to add 1 felony attorney, 1 misdemeanor attorney, and 1 advocate who's preferably bilingual for a total of $305,853. This money that we have discussed to be transferred over into our budget is looking at the COVID relief fund, because we do believe that this is directly attributable to COVID, as we have obviously seen those numbers go up, whereas other numbers have gone down. Next slide. Our abuse and neglect division, we have only ever had 2 dedicated attorneys to that. We've actually transferred somebody from our felony division over to those cases because the need was so great. So now we do have 3 full-time attorneys, but it's because we put a hole somewhere else in our felony division. And we did not have any support staff for that. They were basically using the person who was in our juvenile division or in our civil division. So the proposal is to add this 1 supervising attorney and 2 dedicated support staff for a total of $295,842. Again, this particular money is coming from the COVID relief fund because again, this is something that we believe is directly attributable to the COVID pandemic that we have, with the understanding that we need to figure out where this money is going to come from in the future. So I will talk about that when we talk about everything together. The second resolution that we have is just adjusting the budget because of some of the increased expenses that we had in these particular departments, as well as a lack of cash on hand is what it was titled as. Essentially, we didn't get as much riverboat funding that we usually got because obviously that was closed down due to COVID. So this is just essentially balancing that portion of the budget so that we don't have a deficiency. And again, asking for this to come from that COVID relief fund and I believe the property freeze tax. Next slide deals with our last resolution this morning. And again, this talks about the creation of a mental health unit. We spoke about this last time where it's the state's attorney's office responsibility to go forward on petitions for medication petitions for individuals who are in our hospitals, as well as involuntary commitment petitions. I have had weekly conversations with our doctors and DHS from AMITA, which is in Aurora, and our Elgin Mental Health Center. They have given me statistics recently about how Kane County has been filing less cases, even though we should be filing more cases. And as a result of that, people are actually malingering in the hospitals and not getting their proper treatment, and also then eventually being released back into the system. And then as Sheriff Hain can tell you, and as Ms. Koenig can tell you, they're coming right back into the criminal justice system because we're not treating them. There are many reasons why this is happening, but primarily because we don't have dedicated people to those units. Again, we believe that mental health cases are continuing to rise, and we're going to see study after study at some point about how COVID has truly affected our communities. And without us being able to aggressively deal with these cases, we're going to see people not getting the treatment in the hospitals that they need to get. So for the first time, we would have 2 dedicated attorneys in the King County State's Attorney's Office, one who would be assigned to the Elgin Mental Health Center and one who would be assigned to Amita and Aurora, specifically to work with those doctors. We would be able to review every petition that the doctors file to make sure that it's legally sufficient. We would be able to provide training to the doctors that includes how to testify, what the legal standard is, and what essentially a court is looking for. And then we would be there to be able to do at least weekly court hearings so that these individuals get to the hearing quicker. Right now, there's a series of delays that have happened for a variety of reasons. And so one of the reasons I have been told is if one of our attorneys isn't available, which is understandable because the attorneys we've had doing that also have full-time jobs in the civil division and frankly deserve vacations every now and again. So having dedicated people to this means that we have a backup for both of the hospitals. We have an expertise, we have a training, we have a way of truly helping the people with the mental health needs so that they're not just coming back into our system and getting into the criminal justice system again, or hurting themselves or hurting someone else. So for this petition, and because we believe that we have seen an increase and we have seen a direct result because of COVID, we are asking that $330,131 transfers to our budget to be able to hire people for this specific division. Next slide. So before we get to questions, because I'm sure there are many, I want you to know that we are doing a huge push to figure out how we can fund these without continuing to come to the board in regards to this. I do understand that the money that I'm asking for now is here because we were given money because of the COVID relief. And I cannot guarantee that every other year, and I shouldn't. That's not a good way to balance a budget or to have a budget, frankly. So in addition to obviously creating programs with the help of the Sheriff's Department that are going to bring in additional revenue, in addition to applying for grants in regards to this, we are also looking at other ways to partner with our community. In partnering with the Elgin Mental Health Center and Amita, we're going to see that we are giving a better response in regards to these cases. In partnering with the Community Crisis Center and Mutual Ground, we're going to again show that we're really out there in the community. So the ability to have grants and the way to be able to fund these programs without putting any more burden on the community is a big one. But the most important thing is that we are going to be working with the public defender and with the chief judge to really talk about our judicial system and how we can make sure that we're doing the best that we possibly can for the entirety of our community. So we are going to be working to see what that looks like. If it's bringing forth a suggestion to the board about a different way to be able to help fund the judicial system, we're going to take on that burden so that we can try to figure out a different way to be able to supplement all of this. So I'm asking in the interim to be granted this because this is the need, because these are the most vulnerable people in our community. And we have shown that because of the increase in the case numbers and the increase in the work, it's necessary to have that now as we continue to find a more sustainable way to have this in our budget. Thank you.
Madam Chair, this is Leonard. Could I ask a question, please?
Mr. Leonard, go ahead.
State's Attorney Mosser, I looked at 3 resolutions. I know we've only moved and seconded the first one, but as a whole, I think it's a good idea to look at all 3 right now, and then we'll take each resolution one at a time. But I noticed in the neglect and abuse area where you need 3 assistant state's attorney, 1 advocate, and 2 support staff, the total cost would be about $600,000, and this would come out of COVID money this year, which I totally accept and have no problem with. In the second resolution, child advocacy and domestic violence, you're asking for $213,000 for additional expenses. I don't know if everybody's read over the resolution, but I do want everyone to be aware of that in this last year, there was $482,000 returned in reduced expenses and additional revenues that weren't used and put back into the general fund. So I think we have more than enough money to handle the child advocacy and domestic violence request for 213. The neglect and abuse is 600,000. I think we should use COVID money for that. And finally, the mental health unit, very important area. We need 2 assistant state's attorneys and 1 support staff. That is $330,000. I would like a little more definition on where that money is coming from. I believe it's coming from the general fund reserve and not COVID. And I would suggest that as we move this forward, which I believe we should on all 3 of these resolutions, that we should look at using money in our COVID reserve versus the general fund reserve. So I'm in support of all 3. I think you've done a great job. I know when you spoke to this committee previously, there was a rather large amount that was requested. I thank you for your consideration and your help in paring that down and making it feasible for us to consider. And I think the funding options are reasonable in all areas. I would recommend, though, that in the 3rd one, the mental health unit, that be funded through COVID money also.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Shepro, go ahead.
I would echo everything that Mr. Leonard just said. I think about the way that our government is structured, and this is perhaps a paradigm case of where things don't work as well as we would like, because as has been pointed out, there are issues about where the money's coming from, where money next year is coming from, which are really beyond the purview of this committee, and yet questions that will ultimately have to be answered. A couple of specific questions. If this is fully implemented per your request, Madam State's Attorney, what would the caseload of the individual attorneys look like compared to what it is now?
So that is going to require math. So you should have given me a little advance notice on that. So for our felony attorneys, if we have 4 of them now, and it's about 520, and we were to add a 5th person, then they're looking at about 100 cases per person. Now, our supervisor is probably going to take less because she is somebody who is going out and providing training to our police departments at no cost to the police department. So that's important to know, but about protocols and proper responses and why we need certain things. So for our misdemeanor division, when we have 300, if we are adding an additional person, instead of 800 cases, it goes down to 600 cases.
And how would that compare with other jurisdictions that might be comparable?
So I still think we're on the high end, even by adding these individuals. I worked a little bit in DeKalb County when I was at Prairie State Legal Services, and I worked with their domestic violence division pretty significantly out there. And the caseload in comparison to Kane County was lower. Now, granted, they have a lower population than what we have, but to me, domestic violence is going to be pretty equivalent across the board. Do I think that we're still short on attorneys? Absolutely, but this is what I think is a reasonable ask given the situation that we're in now.
A lot of instances, whether it's the coroner or the state's attorney or public defender, we always speak in terms of caseload per attorney. But I wondered if you could, for people that might not be as familiar with what happens, when we say, for example, somebody's carrying 300 cases, they're obviously not up in court every day. But I wondered if you could just give us a sense of just what a caseload like that means to an individual attorney trying to handle it.
Absolutely. So when a case is assigned to us, we have to order all of the information. And let me just talk about a domestic violence case to start off with. On every domestic violence case, we order a 911 call because that's the first point of contact that a victim has with police. From there, we have to order all of the police reports, we have to order the body cam footage, and then if they're in custody, we have to order additional information. A lot of the police officers find that there's cell phone recordings, they find that there are ring videos, and so we have to get all of that, we have to upload it to our system, we have to number all of it, and we have to tender it to the other side. In addition to reviewing all of that information, we have to look at the criminal history because we also have to make an offer on a case. Now, that's the work that has to happen on every single one of these cases. On any given day, pre-COVID times, they would probably have 30 to 50 cases up in a courtroom that they're having to deal with. Now it's less because we have to do everything via Zoom. And I know the court system is moving to get the cases through the system as much as possible. So their mornings are spent all day in court, essentially exchanging discovery, talking about the cases, doing plea paperwork, setting cases over for a hearing. Their afternoons either have a hearing or they're preparing cases for trial. They're sending out subpoenas. They are contacting victims. They're setting up meetings with police officers to prep for cases. So it's a significant amount of work to have even just 100 cases for a felony attorney or 600 for a misdemeanor attorney, or for a civil attorney right now who has all of their civil matters to then also have to deal with the mental health cases.
Thank you. I think that puts a really good perspective. You know, this is not sort of the TV version where you only see the part that takes place in court.
That's correct.
Okay, any further questions? Right now we are in discussion. We have a motion for the first resolution, which is the establishment of the abuse, neglect, and domestic violence unit positions. Any further questions or comments for our state's attorney?
Just one more comment, maybe, Davist.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Davist.
As I listen again today, I'm reminded why I've been drawn to the work of this committee for so long. Little experience of my own in corrections many years ago, and a front row seat to the work of my wife for many years in family law and particularly in guardian ad litem work. So these are all near and dear to me, and the need has been there for a long time. But I really appreciate the spirit that we continue to hear from the sheriff, the state's attorney, and the public defender on working together to make this all happen. We have the CARES Act money, and as Mr. Leonard points out, that it should be used. And as Mr. Shepro pointed out earlier in the sheriff's part of the presentation, it is a cautionary tale. It won't last forever, and we have to find ways to fund these moving forward. But that's already been acknowledged by the folks reporting to us. So it's again, it's refreshing to hear, and I'm going to be supporting these with the change that Mr. Leonard mentioned on the one funding aspect.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think we all understand that COVID, like Sheriff Hayne just mentioned, we're 1 year in, the effects and what we will have to deal with the COVID pandemic is kind of just beginning on a lot of other ends. So I'm in agreement that this be funded from our CARES Act money. And I'm also in agreement that we need to be cautious, and we should really be open to whoever we're hiring to let them know that we don't know if they're going to have, funding for their position forever, because we don't know how long the effects are going to last regarding the COVID pandemic, or where else we're going to get funding. But I'm sure our state's attorney will be working very hard to be creative with the funding solutions for this. Okay, any other questions or comments regarding our first resolution?
Call the question.
Mr. Shepro, go ahead.
Oh, I say call the question.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
Brown,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Shepro,
Shepro, yes.
Davist.
Davist, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And this will move on to our Finance Committee next. Okay, we have a second resolution.
Thank you. Our second resolution, as we discussed before, deals with just essentially balancing the budget that we had because of some losses because of COVID and because of extra work that happened. And I explained that more fully in the PowerPoint presentation.
Leonard moves.
Brown seconds.
Okay, Mr. Leonard moves, Mr. Brown seconds. Any questions or comments regarding this particular resolution?
Shepro?
Mr. Shepro, go ahead.
Yeah, this is the resolution that Mr. Leonard spoke about earlier, that it suggested that we would change the proposed funding source.
Madam Chair, if I could respond to Mr. Shepro.
Yes, please.
Mr. Shepro, no, this actual resolution is additional funding requests for expenses, and it will be funded by a $482,000 return that the state's attorney's office put back into the general fund last year. So they are asking for less than half of what they put back into the general fund. So I'm in full support of this.
So this is really just okay, I got it. Thank you.
Okay, and just to clarify, that is coming out of our property tax protection fund, not out of the money that was put in for the COVID fund.
That's correct.
Correct. Okay, any further questions or comments? Okay, hearing and seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Brown,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Shepro,
Shepro, yes.
Davist.
Davis, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. This resolution moves on to our Finance Committee.
Thank you. So the last resolution that we have is to actually fund a mental health unit. And again, the mental health unit will add 2 assistant state's attorneys and a support staff to be able to handle the caseload coming out of Amita and Elgin Mental Health Center.
Leonard moves.
Brown will second.
Okay, Mr. Leonard moves, Mr. Brown seconds. Any questions, comments regarding this resolution?
Madam Chair, this is Leonard. I would just like to make one comment on this. I'm in full support of this. However, I believe the funding should not come from the special reserve. It should come from COVID funding. So as we move it ahead to finance, I would request that the resolution be changed to COVID reserve funding.
If that's
Sanchez.
a motion, I'll second it.
Mr. Sanchez, go ahead.
Yeah, I could speak to this. This is coming from a special reserve that was created due to the savings that we achieved from the coronavirus relief fund. So there's actually not any CRF money left to put to any of these kinds of programs. It's only coming from a special reserve that is a result of the savings. So the payroll that we had budgeted was reimbursed. So now we had that extra money in our budget, which is in that special reserve, part of which is for COVID. I believe at the last Finance Committee meeting, Mr. Onzik gave us more detailed information on that. So it isn't coming from our normal stash of cash.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sanchez. Any further questions or comments? Okay, hearing and seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Brown,
Yes.
Gums,
Gums, yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Sanchez,
Yes.
Shepro,
Shepro, yes.
Davist.
Davis, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next item on the agenda is our public defender. Good morning, Ms. Koenig, go ahead.
Good morning, thank you. Last month when we were here and Ms. Mosser presented her presentation, we talked about that this month I would present to you the status of our office as well in relation to the requests that Ms. Mosser was making. So I have a PowerPoint prepared in relation to that. The first slide does talk about all of the areas that public defenders are appointed to represent clients in King County. There are areas in here where we are doing, most of the areas are criminal areas, but there are certain areas where we are practicing civil law as well and quasi-criminal civil law. Next slide, please. We currently practice in 5 courthouses throughout the county, so we do staff all of those courthouses. Next slide, please. We currently have 37 attorneys, and as I indicated, we staff all of the main courthouses. We do not go to Aurora Branch Court or Elgin Branch Court. We also have a division, a conflicts division, which is known as our multiple defendants division. If we have a conflict with 2 clients that come into the main office, then we have the ability to pass one of those clients on to our conflict attorneys. So we have 2 attorneys that handle those cases. We currently have 8 support staff, which includes 1 paralegal and 1 interpreter and 2 investigators. Next slide, please. This is a slide of over the past 3 years, our opened and closed files. As you can see from this slide are the numbers that we are closing, started out in 2018 being very, very close to what we opened. The difference in those 2 numbers has gone down and significantly went down in 2020. Obviously, a good part of that was COVID. I also believe that over 2019 and 2020, that it is a result of the increased number of body cam evidence that we are getting and squad car videos. And I think that that will continue to increase in regards to the new Criminal Reform Act. In order to be able to close files in a timely and an efficient manner, we need experienced attorneys to be able to do that. We need experienced attorneys who can look at those files, can assess the case, know how to get through the discovery in an expeditious manner, and know how to help direct their clients. In felony cases, for example, the issues are much more complex. The discovery is much more complex. The laws are much more complex. And so therefore, then the issues that our clients are facing are much more complex. And we need to have experienced attorneys that are able to answer those questions of the clients and be able to move the cases along in a timely fashion. And when I say move the cases along, that is either get the case to trial or enter into a plea agreement that works well for all parties. Next slide, please. The first area that I wanted to talk about, and I know I have talked about this quite a lot within the year that I have been here, is abuse and neglect. And I am going to go right along with the things that you have heard from Ms. Mosser, as well as Chief Judge Hall in past meetings, as to the need in this county all the way around for all of the players in the system, and that is abuse and neglect. Abuse and neglect are civil proceedings, as I mentioned. We represent the parents who are accused of either neglect or abuse of their children. Generally, there are 2 parents involved in each case because the issues among the parents are often divergent. We only represent one of the parents, and then there is conflict counsel that is appointed to represent the other parent. While these cases do not result in criminal sanctions, so the parents cannot be sent to jail or to prison, the ramifications are removal of the children from the home all the way to termination of parental rights. Next slide, please. These cases are, even though they're civil and maybe the ramifications are not quite as serious as being put in prison for the rest of your life, they are very serious cases and they take a great deal of work. In the courtroom, you have multiple agencies involved who all come to the court proceedings. So the court proceedings can take a lot longer than a general status date for a criminal case. You have Department of Children and Family Services involved. You have treatment providers because both the parents and the children are receiving services, and they are receiving services from multiple agencies. So you have all of those people who come to give a report on how these services are being conducted. You also have representatives from CASA. CASA is the guardian ad litem for the children, so they are also present and give a report as to the progress of the case. Currently, as Ms. Mosser has indicated, she has 3 assistant state's attorneys assigned to that courtroom, and there are 4 conflict counsel, as well as the 1 attorney from our office. So on any given court date, there are numerous people involved in that case. You have, in preparation for these cases, you get reports from each of those agencies to tell the status and the progress of the parents and the children. So there are stacks of reports for each case. And if you have a case with multiple children, then you get multiple treatment providers and multiple reports for each child and for each parent. These are not the kind of cases that close quickly. The parents are required to complete services, and even if they are doing the services as they are required to do, it is a process. It is a process that takes a great deal of time. So most of these cases stay open for several years. So unlike criminal cases, where sometimes those cases stay open for several years, but the majority of those cases we are able to get closed within a year. In abuse and neglect, these cases are staying open for several years, which means that you need attorneys there that are very experienced, very efficient, and very organized. These are our numbers for abuse and neglect, which I have shared with you before, just including them again. And as we've discussed in previous meetings, the shift that has obviously happened from 2018 to 2020 has been based upon the approach of Department of Children and Family Services and their move based upon some rather notorious cases that have happened, and their move to begin taking more children into the system. So when they changed their approach, instead of trying to leave families intact, to taking children and to trying to provide services and taking guardianship of those children, that increases our workload. It not only increases the public defender's workload, but the state's attorney's workload and the judge's workload. And so that is where we sit now. And this is just a snapshot of what we've been looking at in this year. Although only 2 months, it does appear that we are on track to continue the increase in appointments in that courtroom. As I indicated, in our office, we have 1 attorney assigned. She currently has 283 open cases, which equates to 188 clients. As I indicated, because these cases don't close quickly, that number will increase this year. And if the trend continues, it will increase a great deal. The attorney that we have in that courtroom, Jenny Amato, she is a fabulous attorney. She is doing a wonderful job in the courtroom. She is a dedicated and experienced attorney. So I have that box checked. The problem is that she is the only attorney for our office. Their court call starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. And because they have so many cases, and because of the organization of the judge there, she has a very strict schedule that she sticks to, that she has to stick to so that they can get anything done there. So they are scheduled time slots for cases, and they go from 9 until noon, and then from 1 until 4:30. And sometimes I have heard that they are going past 4:30 to get things completed. With Ms. Amato being the only attorney for our office, she does not have breaks in between cases because we are on the majority of the cases in that courtroom. So she has no time in between cases to make phone calls to clients to make sure that they know how to get on Zoom and to make sure that they are there. She has no time to talk to the treatment providers in between cases. So this is all work that she is doing after courthouse hours and on the weekend so that she can stay organized and efficient in her cases. With all of that said, I don't have resolutions today. I did not intend to have a resolution today. I just wanted this to be sort of the beginning of the discussion for you to be able to see what the needs are for the Public Defender's Office. But I do expect that next month I will be bringing forth a resolution, at the very least, for abuse and neglect, because I do really believe that that is should be our main focus in our office right now. I am going to talk to you, though, a little bit about post-conviction cases as well. Post-conviction cases are where clients have gone through the trial level, they've gone through the appellate level, and are now asking the judge to take another look at issues associated with their cases. This is making sure that everything was done correctly in the trial level and at the appellate level. Just to give you an idea of what that entails for the attorneys assigned to these cases, they have to read all of the transcripts. So they have to read all of the trial transcripts and all of the appellate transcripts. This can equate to hundreds of pages of transcripts. They have to speak to their client, who most of the time is in the Department of Corrections. I point that out because it is not unlike the sheriff, who is so gracious to us in allowing us access to our clients. It's a little bit more difficult to arrange visitation with your clients in the Department of Corrections. They have to conduct investigation into the cases. So it's like starting over from as if you had got the case pre-trial. They interview witnesses and then ultimately write and litigate the petition for the case. This is just a snapshot of how our numbers have increased for post-conviction petitions. In 2020, we had 14 new petitions assigned to our office. Currently, in King County, with the help of the judges, we have received a great report that kind of has laid everything out for our county. And we currently have 73 open post-conviction cases in King County. The Public Defender's Office is assigned to 47 of those cases. So we are representing over half of the number of cases opened in King County. Of those 73 cases, 39 are murder cases. Our office has 18 of those 39 murder cases. Just one issue to point out in regards to that, murder cases take a great deal of time. And so in our office, when we get pretrial murder cases, we try to spread those out so that any one attorney, we try very hard for any one attorney to only have one murder case at a time. Currently, the person that we have doing post-conviction cases, he has 18 murder cases. So 18 of his 38 post-conviction petitions are murders. However, as with Ms. Amato, Mr. Tapman is doing a great job in this position. In 2020, he filed 10 amended petitions and was able to close 4 of his cases. As with abuse and neglect, these are not cases that close quickly. As you can see, there is a great deal of work associated with them, and so they do generally take time. However, with the help of the judiciary, we are trying to move these cases more efficiently and make them a priority. What I would ask that the board keep in mind in regards to that, while we are committed to doing that, it is a great deal of work for one person to be able to do. In regards to our salaries, as I am putting this in here as this was part of what we discussed last month as well. This is a breakdown I did as Ms. Mosser did and compared the 2 counties that are closest in population to King County and give you some statistics as to the salaries for their supervisors and their starting salaries. Interestingly, King County is competitive with other counties in regards to starting salaries. Next slide. Where the issue becomes is competitive as time goes on. And this slide kind of gives you an idea of bar admissions of attorneys and average salaries in the other 2 counties compared to King County. And this is where you can see the significant difference between what King County attorneys are making and what public defenders in Will and Lake County are making. Prior to taking this position, I did have the ability to be part of hiring attorneys in our office. And one of the things that we always look for in hiring an attorney is we want someone who is not only a good fit for our county and for our office, but we are looking for someone who is dedicated to the job and wants to make this a career position for them. Because we feel that if we have dedicated people who are looking to make a career position, these are the kinds of people who are going to be efficient and who are going to be dedicated and are going to be able to move the cases efficiently. The problem is that salaries are online. At any county, you can look up the salaries of any attorney who works in that county. So anyone coming to our office potentially looking for a job and wants to make that a career path for them, they can look at any county and see, well, what will I be making 5 years from now? This is where the problem lies, is our ability to be competitive with attorneys that we want to keep 5 years, 10 years, and 15 years down the road. Next slide. So as I was preparing this PowerPoint presentation, I got a call from IT, or I'm sorry, an email from IT, and he indicated that he had received a FOIA request where someone was asking for the emails of all public defenders. He forwarded that FOIA request on to me, and I took a look at it and noticed that it was a Lake County government email address. So I looked up the name, and it was associated with the HR department in Lake County. So we called the head of the HR department in Lake County and asked why he wanted our email addresses. And he said that he was going to be very honest with me. He wanted to steal my people. And so Lake County has a job posting which closes tomorrow. And that job posting indicates that they are looking for an attorney with 4 years of experience as a public defender. The starting salary for that position is $87,433.68. What the head of the HR department told me is while that is the starting salary, the public defender in Lake County can go as high as $99,769 for this position. Next slide. In my office, I currently have 18 assistant public defenders who have 4 or more years of experience who may very much be interested in this position in Lake County. None of those 18 make $87,433.68. Among the 18, I have one who has 15 years of experience. He is making $83,232. He is my attorney who is doing post-conviction petitions and is doing a fabulous job. Interestingly, with his position, at the time that Mr. Tapman started in our office in 2005, there was another attorney who started the very same month that he started. His name was Evan Atwood. Evan Atwood currently works for Lake County Public Defender's Office. He left our office to go to Lake County. Evan makes $95,000 a year. I have one assistant in my office right now who has 4 years of experience. She could apply to this position. Currently, she is making $56,182. I think I talked about this a little bit last month when I was here, but all of the people that do this job in the public defender's office, that do this job in the state's attorney's office, they don't take these jobs because they want to become rich. They know that they are taking civil servant jobs, and they know that they're not going to make the money that they would make at a big law firm. But they do the jobs because they love their jobs, because they want to give back to their community, and they want to help their clients. They have made sacrifices in their life to take these public service jobs. But I believe as a county and as a criminal community, We want hardworking attorneys in our offices. We want attorneys who will stay, that will make this their career. And I think that we have to give them comparative pay to other counties in order to do that. And that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you, Ms. Conant. Thank you for your presentation. Any comments or questions regarding the presentation?
Madam Chair, Brown here.
Mr. Brown, please go ahead.
Thank you. You gave us an awful lot to think about. And as you're going through your presentation, I had a lot of questions, and I'm just going to really have to take some time to think about this whole situation more. Obviously, the salaries are one thing that's a huge issue. One question I do have with you, when you referred to your caseloads and how many of them you close and how long it takes to close them, the amount of time it takes to close them in Kane County, is that consistent with or higher or lower than other counties, or what you think it should be?
I think that, I don't know that I can give you the numbers on that. I think that we do a very good job at closing cases. Unfortunately, it's a case by case as to how quickly a case will close. You can have a Class X felony that you think is going to last a long time and closes very quickly because you're able to get the discovery, you're able to speak to the state's attorney, work out something with your client and get that case closed. You can have a misdemeanor where you have a client who has mental illnesses and it takes a lot longer because there may be fitness issues, or it just may be issues of being able to get around the mental illness to be able to communicate with your client. How quickly cases close, I think, is also dependent upon the relationship between our office and the state's attorney's office. And I think that I said this last month, we are only as good as they are good, and they are only as good as we are good. If we are both fully staffed and are able to get that discovery to one another and get our answers to discovery to them, then I think that cases do move more efficiently.
Thank you.
Comment, Shepro?
Mr. Shepro, go ahead.
This, I think, is a really informative presentation that, I've been in this county for over 30 years. And as long as I can remember, the issue has been, how do we keep our skilled attorneys? And the example that was just given is probably one of the starkest examples. For years, people have said out here, and I think it's true, that people stay here, whether it's in the state's attorney's office or the public defender's office, because of the culture, the advantages, the training, and that somehow makes up for the increasing disparity in compensation. But that only goes so far. And the example that was given of Lake County, what you can all see from that is that we're basically training people because they want to come here for the starting salary. And then after we've trained them, off they go. And one thing which I don't think was mentioned, but you got to appreciate, I would guess that most of these young attorneys are faced with staggering student debt from their education. Even the public law schools nowadays, the tuition and fees are really just grown at an astronomical basis. And I think it's just something that has been put off too long. One of the first things that I encountered when I became involved in politics and legal matters in Kane County was State's Attorney Gorecki pointing out the disparity in compensation. And what you saw today was not just a what happens versus the private sector, but even in the public sector. And I just think that when you think about what these folks do on a daily basis, and the intensity with which you have to do that work. You know, these are not office jobs where you're sitting, you know, drafting leases or things like that. And particularly, and I'm not up on what the context of those post-conviction cases are, but my guess would be is that very many of them are what are called ineffective assistance of counsel cases. And which means that our public defenders have those cases because it's alleged by the defendant that somebody didn't do a good job at the original trial level. And hence what was referred to the trial tree, all the work that has to be done just to familiarize yourself with the basic facts before you would even get into court is staggering. And our system depends on the belief that a defendant has the right to the effective assistance of counsel. And you heard references made to the murder cases. I believe it was true, at least at one time, and I don't do this area, is that murder is something where you actually have to be certified to be able to competently handle those cases because you don't want to generate post-conviction cases. So I think that this is a problem that just demands that we focus on this and try to bring these positions in line. It's not just a matter of keeping people that we want to keep. It's a matter of looking at what these people are sacrificing. I'm guessing that many cases you have trouble paying your student debt at some of these salaries. So I apologize for going on so long, but I think that it's just something that we all have to appreciate. You know, there's no union for the public defenders, but that means we have to be their advocates. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepro. And thank you for those words. Any further questions or comments? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Ms. Conant, we look forward to your resolutions next month. I agree with what Mr. Shepro said, and we need to start providing support for your department as well, and mirroring the support that we've provided to the state's attorney. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, okay, next item on our agenda is our judiciary and courts.
Okay, thank you. First, Mr. Brown, I wanted to just answer your question about the time it takes to get through a case. The circuit clerk Barrero and I, all of us actually, have been trying to work with Odyssey right now. The computer software that we have is supposed to be able to generate those case management reports to be able to tell us how long it takes for a case to get through. And then there's a new manual on record keeping that we're being ordered to do by the state that also wants to look at the amount of time that it's going to take for cases to get through the system for case management purposes. I've really enjoyed working with her, and she's been very forthcoming and trying to take the initiative to push Odyssey to give what they've promised us. I don't know if she wants to speak on that a little bit more, but we're working really, really hard to get those because it's important for everybody to know how long it takes every one of those cases to get through the system. And the National Center for State Court agrees. So I don't know if you wanted to say anything else before I go on about that.
Just that it's a huge project, and it's been kind of one of those cans that we've kicked down the road for a while now, because every time they try to, try to implement something, or IT tries to implement something, we have issues. So we're finding out though that it's just like everything else we do with when we upgrade our phones, something else doesn't work, right? So in my layman's terms, once we get this 2018 in, a lot of the problems that we saw with 2016 and 2015 will be solved. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, I appreciate what she's done, and during the time that I've had a chance to work with her in the last 2.5 months is refused to kick the can down the road and not accepting their answers, which are, we'll get to it, which I greatly appreciate it, because we're paying good money for that. We should be able to get that.
I appreciate that comment, response, whatever you want to call it. Because my question in this, and Madam Chair, if you don't mind, just one more comment on it, is I would think, me being a layman sitting here, I would think that a person in the situation that they're in when they're trying to get their own problems resolved and having to work through the court system could dramatically affect the outcome for that individual in many different ways, health-wise, job-wise, relationship-wise, everything else. And so I think it's important that once you get that information, because it's hard to make decisions without that information, and that information doesn't do you any good if you don't look at it seriously to say, now, how can we take this information and improve on it? So I appreciate that.
100%. We're with you. So just to go through a couple things before I go to our PowerPoint presentation. But the first thing is I want to just talk about the Criminal Justice Reform Act. It's something that you've heard us talk about. Recently, we had our justice managers all meet together and we formed a subcommittee because I think we owe it as a committee to come to you and this committee and then also the county board in toto to talk to you about the economic impact that we think this legislation is going to have on the county. There's going to be revenue that the county is going to lose. There are going to be expenses that the county is going to incur because of that bill. And although, again, it's about a 500-page bill, everybody's trying to go through that. And so this committee that we've put together, my hope is we will come to you in this committee and to give you an outlook as to what that looks like, because it's going to be substantial. The next thing about that I want to say is we had worked with Chairman Molina and the justice managers. One of the questions that came up a month ago in this committee was there's a lot of needs, there's a lot of wants, there's a lot of people that are coming, we're coming before you and having conversations we haven't had for a long time. But I think it's realistic of the county board to ask us to prioritize those needs as well. And so what we're trying to do is we have talked to one facilitator already. We have another meeting today where we're trying to get somebody that's going to help all of us to go through that and take a comprehensive look at everything that we've talked about, to be able to work together to try to reach a consensus that we can bring to you, to try to identify those needs that we think are most glaring, and then to let you know from top to bottom what we think those needs are so that you have a look at those and can make some decisions. So I know that we continue to come before you and ask and ask and ask, but I believe we're trying to demonstrate for you the need, but we also understand the economic realities of what you have to face. So with that being said, if there's a PowerPoint, not the Diagnostic Center one, but there's the one on the JJC build out. If we could go ahead and have that put up. And while that's being put up, I'll just start. I handed out to the people that were here today a PowerPoint. And what we're talking about is the Juvenile Justice Center over there. What we are trying to do is we are asking the county board, and the purpose of today's date is education. We're not asking to put forward any sort of resolution. But what we are attempting to do is to build out a second courtroom at the Juvenile Justice Center. Right now, there is one courtroom, and our goal would be to have a second courtroom built out by January 1st of next year. Next slide. So I'm not going to belabor this because you've heard it before, but again, just the numbers. One of the things that I've been taught to, and one of the things we've talked a lot about, is this a need or a want? I definitely think that this is a need and not something we would just like to have. And again, just a snapshot of the numbers you've heard over and over and over again. You can see the increase, and I agree with everything that's been said. We are projected now to have even more cases than we did in 2020. Next slide. Just to give you a little bit of a background, the abuse neglect courtroom that we have right now is currently housed over at the 3rd Street Courthouse that was built in 1892. Our juvenile delinquency court, which handles juveniles that commit crimes, that delinquency court is in the JJC. And that makes sense because obviously when kids are being held there, they just get brought up right to the courtroom. One of the things, though, that we see a lot is what we call dual involved youth, where we have youth that are not only charged and in delinquency court, but those same youth are in abuse neglect court. And Ms. Mosser's talked about this a lot when we talk about the sooner you can intervene and get help for kids, the more likely you are that you're going to stop that cycle of crime. So we will have kids that are in both our abuse neglect courtrooms because they have been taken away from their children or taken away from their parents. They're also committing crimes, so they have cases in both courtrooms. But when that happens right now, we have to have them at 3rd Street one day, and then we have to have them over at the JJC another day. So the goal is to have the abuse neglect and the juvenile delinquency division in the same location. Next slide, please. We came before you back in September. We had the plan. We went ahead and with our budget had Corrigan and Clark take a look at what that courtroom would cost us. At the time, and this isn't a long time ago, it was just September, October, the cost estimate was $851,548, and that was pre an RFP being put out. What I want to emphasize is when the JJC was originally built, the idea was to have 2 courtrooms there. So this build out would not require any square footage to be added, and we would just use the available space that we have. Because when this courtroom was originally, or the JJC was originally designed, it was supposed to have 2 courtrooms. Next slide. I know it's hard to see on the PowerPoint, but the people that I did give the PowerPoint in front, these were the plans that they had that rendered what it would look like. And so what we've tried to do, and again, we have space constraints, but what we really are doing with this second courtroom is right now, that's the public defender's office over there that houses 1 PD. But we did have to figure out where to put the PD's office. And then also we're cutting into some of the space over at the state's attorney's office there as well. Next slide. We look at this as a possibility or an opportunity to capture some of the savings that COVID has allowed us to capture this year. And when I say it's a one-time opportunity, this is only because of the savings that we're experiencing because of COVID that we would have the money to do this project. What we're looking at is using the judicial and courts budget and the court services budget. And there are savings that we expect to have this coming year and to use those savings to pay for the build out. Next slide. I won't go into great detail, but the savings that we see, and I've just gone through this with you before, but typically we have 7 criminal courtrooms that are holding juries every week. Right now, because of COVID, we can only hold 1. That significantly reduces the amount of jurors that we're bringing in. And when we don't have to bring in jurors, money that you, the county board, have allocated to us for those costs, we are not incurring. Same thing with contractual and consulting. What that covers is our interpreters. But because court's been closed for so much and because we've been able to work with the AOIC, the cost of our interpreters and what we have to pay this year is way down. And then there's some other line items, bond call, court-appointed counsel, and court services where we'll see some projected savings as well. Next slide. And actually, she was ahead of me right here. You're right where you're supposed to be. And court services, we have juvenile board and care. Right now, the county board allocates about $400,000 a year for youth that are going into placement. Because of COVID, placements have been limited, if non-existent. And so again, this is money that we need to use every year. But this one particular year, because of COVID, we will have a significant opportunity to capture some savings. And then Director Ost has done a fantastic job of going through her budget to try to figure out other areas that we could save in order to come up with the money. And I appreciate the cooperation on that end. So next slide. Our request of you at this point in time, and again, this is just educational, but we're asking, since we don't have a capital line item, what we're asking you to do is to authorize the use of capital funds to build out this second courtroom. In addition, when Mr. Leonard was the chair of the committee, we had come before this committee because we had hoped to use probation fees to build this courtroom out. That request was denied by the Administrative Office of Illinois Courts. So that's a done deal. But what we did ask at that time was because we had some money left over at the end of last year, we had asked to roll over $125,000 of that to help us with this project. But because of where we're at, we weren't able to go forward with that, but we would ask that the county board consider doing something similar to that moving forward. If we did that, then we would cover the $726,548 if we were fortunate enough to get that 125. Next slide. Because this is, and we've gone back, because this is a need and not a want, because this is something we're trying to do and hope to move on as quickly as possible. It was recommended to me by Chair Molina and some other people that are better equipped to understand the chronological fashion of how things work through the county board to bring this first, the resolution to the administrative committee, just based upon the timing. Hopefully get approval to then go in front of finance, then to exec, and then to come in front of the county board for a vote. Now, again, that's the projected timeline, and I would have to defer to the county board to tell me whether that's realistic. So in a nutshell, that's the educational piece, and I would love to answer any questions that you might have. The only thing I'd like to emphasize again is we understand the constraints that you have financially, and what we have tried to do is to try to figure out a way that we can pay for this without coming to you and really asking for any additional money. Thank you.
Question, Madam Chair, Shepro.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Shepherd, go ahead.
Judge, on that timeline, assuming that we got to the May County Board meeting, what would then be your projection as to when the courtroom would be open and available for use?
My understanding is if we were fortunate to be able to have it go through the timeline after it was approved, then Corrigan and Clark would have to, they've requested 30 days to be able to prepare bidding paperwork and to get the bids out. Then they said that they would close the bids 2 weeks after that and then hope to get started. Again, I know that this is a optimistic timeline, but then the hope would be is construction would start around June, middle of June. They said that they project the project would take about 5 months. So they thought that the January 1st timeline was realistic. And again, because we're building out the space, it makes it a much easier project. They've already been over there to see where the weight-bearing walls are and what they'd have to do.
I guess the point is that with this being a need, even under an optimistic time frame, we're looking at the end of the year.
Correct. And we are making do right now. One of the great questions that came up was, well, if you do that, what's going to happen to room 140? We would still probably need, based upon the amount of cases that are coming through, having the two courtrooms together would give us the flexibility of potentially having the judge that's only hearing delinquency right now also hear abuse neglect. But there could be a possibility where we would have to try to staff that 140 a half a day a week.
Madam Chair, this is Leonard. Could I ask a question of the Chief Judge?
Sure.
Please, Mr. Leonard, go ahead.
First of all, Chief Judge, I'd like to thank you for the presentation. It was very refreshing to me personally to see someone else use the term I use all the time, need and wants. So thank you for that in the presentation. On a more serious note, though, I'd like to say that it looks like the cost of this courtroom would probably be somewhere between $850,000 and $900,000. And last year, the Judicial and Public Safety Committee was in a position to give a consensus agreement that they would like to be involved in this to the tune of about $125,000 if the AOC had approved the funds for this use. They did not. So the Chief Judge went back with his partners, came up with this solution, and they're not asking for any more money. In fact, I've always thought with partnerships, if we can share, it's a good thing. Well, in this partnership, it's kind of nice because they're going to be spending about 80% of the money out of their own budgets and savings. And those savings are coming, as the judge had mentioned, from the interpreter expense, the juror expense, and juvenile board and care. So I'm very much in favor of this, and I would ask Madam Chair if she could ask for a consensus on this so that when it goes through the different committee structure, that they realize that we've been presented with this now on 2 occasions. And the financing, although it is a different source now, It is not affecting our general fund at all, and they are not asking for any more money. So I'd like to thank the Chief Judge for his presentation and once again, give my full support behind that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Leonard. Yes, I completely agree. This is a wonderful example of how we're using this one-time pretty much funds and how we're able to use it for something that is needed in the county and that will be used for generations to come. So absolutely, at this time, I would ask for consensus from our committee members so that when this goes to administration, they are aware that our committee is in agreement. So
Madam
anybody
Chair,
who-
this is Leonard again. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
State's Attorney Mosser had said when we're looking for a consensus, if we could just ask for any objectors, and then if we don't get any objectors, the consensus is understood.
Yes, thank you. I paused before I said that. So if anybody is against this consensus, speak now. Okay, hearing none. Chief Judge Hall, you have consensus from our committee. Thank you so much for bringing this forward.
Thank you very much, everybody. I would have nothing further for our report.
Okay, so next item on our agenda. Okay, thank you. Court Services Administration, Ms. Ost.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. I don't have any resolutions, but I have an update, and then I'll turn it over to Dr. Singh to talk about the Diagnostic Center. I don't normally, well, let me take that back. I'm going to give a huge shout out to the health department. We have been trying to partner with them for about 5 or 6 years now on a community mental health initiative. We started having talks about, and you all may be aware, and we've talked about it here quite a bit, that there is a growing body of evidence that violence begets violence, and that from an epidemiological point of view, if that was a hard word, it's almost like you can trace that like a contagion through the community. And so we've been having these discussions with the health department because they're very interested in public health. And we all know that violence and crime greatly affects public health. And what could a partnership with community corrections look like to try to address that? And we were really close to having a community initiative with all these different partners, and then COVID hit and they got absorbed into that. Nonetheless, they were able to write and achieve and get a grant to address community mental health initiatives, and we still made progress on this. And so beginning this month, and hopefully I'll be able to come back in 5 or 6 months to give you an update, they have managed to put together this community database whereby we're able to connect families and individuals who have needs with community services who have capacity to serve them. And that sounds like a very small thing, but it's actually huge, because right now when someone comes onto a probation caseload, the probation officer spends a lot of time calling agencies one by one, finding out, do they have a wait list? What are your parameters? Do you have a sliding scale? Can you fit my person in? And then basically haggling with them about, my person has a lot more needs than whoever you have on your wait list. Can you bump my person up? So this now, it's a database where agencies are going to be able to list what their current openings are, all of that financial intake information. And so we don't have to call a dozen placements. We could just look to see, oh, this one has an opening right now. I'm just going to go straight there. So it's going to save my officers time, and we're going to get these people into services a lot more quickly. And we automatically are going to know, do they work with Medicaid, which insurance agencies they work with, and what plans they take. So I'm super happy and super thrilled with the health department for doing this. I want to give a huge shout out to Michael Isaacson. He's been wonderful to work with on this, and all of his staff, like Anna, they have been wonderful. So I just wanted to let you know that that's something that we've made a lot of progress on. And I talked about this like 5 or 6 years ago. So finally I can close that loop. So having said all that, I'm now going to turn it over to Dr. Singh, who is here. She is the director of the Kane County Diagnostic Center. As you know, it's not very common for court systems to have their own diagnostic center. Over the years, she's reported about all the services that she's able to provide to the courts at a much reduced cost than if we had to subcontract for those. So I will, without much further ado, let her talk to you.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning. Today, I will be reporting on the annual report for the Diagnostic Center for 2020. Next slide. For those of you you who don't know, we are housed in the Circuit Clerk's building, right where Kane County Branch Court is. Next slide. We, like Director Oss says, we are actually unique in the sense that not all court systems have their own diagnostic center. We do exist by statute, and all the work we do for the court is mandated. So everything is court ordered, whether it's evaluation or treatment or some of the other programming I will talk to you about shortly. Next slide. The Diagnostic Center, the way we are set up is we are a part of court services along with probation and JJC. It is highlighted over here to the right on the organizational chart. Aside from the Diagnostic Center and all the psychological services we provide, we are also in charge of the Kids First program, which is a divorce parenting program for the court. And as well as we have the budget for the juvenile custody too that was mentioned earlier. So anything that is remotely psychological, juvenile, or psychoeducational will fall under our umbrella. Next slide. We are not a big department. We consist of 5 psychologists. I do have 2 postdocs and some interns. And students as well who are here to do psychological testing. We do contract out some services, although that has declined in the last few years. So this is our organizational chart. And on the next slide, I'll give you some faces. You see our names signed on the psychological reports a lot, but here are kind of the faces to match with the names. And even better yet, if you look towards your left in the galley, the majority of the Diagnostic Center are sitting here right now. We don't take up much space, but we are here. You guys could wave. I have 2 psychologists, 2 students, my AA and support staff. And that is, I have 1 psychologist on maternity leave and 1 who is manning the Diagnostic Center right now. So that is us. What we do, we are the best known for providing psychological evaluations to the courts. However, we actually do a wide variety of services that I will just, it's all included on the other slides, so I will not read off of this slide to save time. But the majority of the work we do is psychological evaluations. Last year, we did 307, which is actually a decrease in the year before where we did 443. Part of that was the COVID situation, and we have experienced a big surge in referrals in the last few months. So right now, to date, since January, we are already at 100. So as the courts kind of catch up, we are now getting those referrals. But we still did 307 evaluations. And when you consider that each evaluation takes about 20 to 30 hours, that's a lot of work hours for those evaluations. Next slide. We do provide evaluations for juveniles too. That has always varied between 20 and 25% of our workload. The number, the sheer number and majority of cases we do are felony cases, mostly on adults, about 75%. Of those 307 evaluations, about half fall under the category of full psychological evaluations. Now, those could be virtually anything. They are very extensive. It could be for any crime, although the majority of them would be for things listed on here on this slide. Most of our domestic battery cases would fall under this category. School shooting threat assessments, whether a juvenile needs to be removed from home and placed in residential treatment, substance abuse, anything like arson, theft, animal cruelty, child abuse cases, mental health court, fitness to parent, anything extensive like that could fall in this category. And usually what we would do in this type of evaluation is to give an opinion on risk levels, but really give the court an opinion of what we believe the treatment should be for the individual, whether that is a specialized form of treatment, whether they should potentially be placed in drug court. So we would provide treatment recommendations for these evaluations. Next slide. Last year, we did 36 sex offender evaluations, and these are by far our most extensive type of evaluations. They would include the full evaluation I just talked about, but in addition, we would also perform IQ tests and a lot of specialized tests of either sexual deviancy or pedophilia. And we absolutely would determine risk based on this type of evaluation. There are 3 different actuarial measures we would use. There's a computerized test where it tests things beyond people's awareness, so they don't know what they're being tested for. Especially that's very useful when you have someone with potential pedophilia. Under this category, we also do, it's very rare, but we do sexually violent predator evaluations. We are usually the second opinion for the Illinois State's Attorney General's office. And these are people who are already had served time for their sex crimes and are committed under the Sexually Violent Predator Act, and they are petitioning to be released, but they cannot be potentially released without a specialized evaluation. So we do come in and once in a while do those where the people are right now housed in DHS custody in Rushville. Again, usually sometimes you have 2,000 pages of, crimes and a whole history to review. So very, very extensive testing for these. Next slide. Aside from just the good old-fashioned psychological evaluations, we also have the capacity to perform any type of forensic evaluation for the court that exists. We have over 100 types of psychological tests at our disposal, and we could virtually answer any question that is asked of us by the judges. So under this category, we would do things such as fitness to stand trial, and that's one of the most common evaluations we do from year to year. But there are such opinions as fitness to plea or fitness to proceed pro se, fitness to be sentenced, Miranda, which is did someone understand their rights at the time of the arrest, sanity evaluations. Those are most common in murder cases or attempted murder cases. And then transfer evaluations would include if a juvenile is being charged with a Class X felony, usually should they be tried as an adult. We do go in and we can give an opinion on that. We also have done 49 pre-employment tests for the Sheriff Department and for 911 dispatch. So for the positions of deputy correctional officers, court security, and also if needed from year to year, fitness for duty evaluations too. So that's a completely different type of psychological test. But we do have the capacity to do those. And again, and on these, it would be pass fail, whether they are psychologically suitable to perform the job duties. Aside from all the evaluations we do, we also provide a lot of consultation to probation, to courts, to attorneys as well. Last year, we did almost $1,300 hours of consultation services. We sit on mental health court, drug court. We provide expert testimony on cases if needed. We do supervision for a doctoral program and just professional consultation. And that could, again, be anything, including trainings that we provide. Aside from Kane County, I actually do have some intergovernmental contracts to do some psychological evaluations for Kendall County, DeKalb, Ogle, and Stevenson. Ogle and Stevenson counties would only be on juveniles that would be housed at JJC. However, 97%, I think we all, yeah, 97% of all the evaluations we did last year were for Kane County. So it's actually a very, very small number. So it's only 3% that were provided to those other counties. And we do charge $1,000 for evaluations when we do that, just for the time and effort. So that could be generating some revenue. Aside from evaluations and the consultation, we also do court mandated treatment. And last year we did about 716 hours of intervention. Most of that was for individual therapy, although we have done groups, and under here, about 10% of those hours were for the Kids First Divorce Parenting Educational Program. COVID brought some challenges for us and for our staff last year because the work that we do are with people and human beings, and you cannot necessarily do psychological testing when it's not face-to-face. For example, an IQ test isn't just asking people questions. It's actually giving them items to manipulate, timing them, watching them, you know, taking those items back, and on you go. Same thing with neuropsych testing or anything like that. So for 2020, we have never stopped meeting anyone, you know, face-to-face. We have gone into jails and detention with, you know, changing the protocols and different parameters. But it was challenging because we did have to, it's not just a matter of telling, you know, my staff, go and do this. First of all, we had to rewrite our consent forms and informed consent. Also, I had to make sure the testing publishers were okay with all the tests are standardized and they have to be given the same way to every single person. And with a telehealth capacity, we had to modify the administration. So, you know, we have to kind of research that. We have gone to telehealth for a lot of our individual therapy sessions and also performing clinical interviews, which really have, it's efficient in terms of expediting the cases. So we don't necessarily have to wait for, you know, jail or anyone to, you know, especially if there's restrictions, to get in there, at least talk to the person. That piece we have done virtually, which has helped move the cases. And then the last thing we did is we took the Kids First Divorce Parenting Education Program, which is a 2-hour live program, and we have made that virtual. And that is, and I'll talk about that in just a little bit right here. Yeah, go ahead. So that is now virtual. And last year, 812 participants enrolled in this program. And what it is by statute, if you are divorcing in the county or anywhere in the state of Illinois with minor children, you need 4 hours of psychoeducation. What we did is we created 2 of those hours to be an online component where you kind of watch this training on how divorce impacts your children, how to co-parent, what are, you know, some pitfalls, and we actually break it down even according to age level, how, you know, divorce impacts a 4-year-old is very different when you're dealing with a 14-year-old. But 2 of those hours are live, but we have now converted that into telehealth, which actually posed, you know, new challenges for us, but I think overall it's been very efficient. We also do run this program in Spanish as well. Every other month, as you can see here, every other month is a Spanish speaking class that is run by a native Spanish speaking clinical psychologist. So we are very lucky to have her. So last year we did 64 classes. It runs every Wednesday, 6 to 8 in the evening, and 812 participants, and 3 people. We also have the capacity, if you are hearing impaired or you don't have access to a computer, you are allowed to come to the Diagnostic Center, where we would actually, the AA and support staff have been great in helping the people navigate through that program. The fees collected for this program total is a little over $107,000, because the fees, you do have to pay a fee to take this class. A big part of what we do is to kind of utilize our, skills in psychology and share the wealth of knowledge that we have. And we do get asked to present a lot. Last year, this is just a little sampling of the topics that we did, but we did presentations on hostage negotiations, especially when you're dealing with mentally ill. What if someone's paranoid? How do you de-escalate that situation versus someone that has bipolar disorder? We did presentations on COVID-19 and mental health, violence risk assessment, systemic racism and racial trauma. And then just in-house, we do a lot of presentations, because we do run a doctorate level externship and internship program. So we will take a topic almost every week and talk about that as well. And then part of our CEUs, we are always trying to be following evidence-based practice. And the field of psychology, just like the medical field, changes, sometimes dramatically from year to year. So we try to really be up on the latest research. And this is just a sampling of some of the presentations and seminars and national presentations that the staff have attended. And this is very specific to, something we can use to then help in our evaluations and help the court system. One of the biggest things that we do is we are a nationwide internship program where people from anywhere in the US can apply. We're actually one of the few forensic clinical psychology programs. We have, although we have struggled, if you could go to the next slide, we have struggled just recently for two big reasons. We really rely on our interns to do the majority of our mandated treatment. That's part of their experience, is to learn how to do psychological evaluations and treatment. For next year, we have not secured any interns, and I think there's two big reasons for it. One is one of the biggest doctoral programs in Chicago, the Illinois School of Professional Psychology, shut down its doors. It was absorbed by National Louis University. However, it's not the same. They had a forensic program. So we lost a lot of students and just potential applicants from that. But the biggest thing is 2021 was kind of the soft deadline to be accredited if you are an internship site for the American Psychological Association. We have, since last year, started the process. However, but without that label and that accreditation yet, we are not as appealing as other sites now. Just recently, we've never had issues with this before until now. The graduate schools are discouraging people to apply to sites who are not accredited. If you go to the next slide, it shows you, if you read the bottom line, that would be us. Clinical programs that are non-accredited only had a 3.5% success rate. This is just this year's statistics. So only 3.5% of those percentage of those sites secured interns, which is a pretty dismal statistic. We are doing a self-study. That's what you need. We are ready to, in June, I believe, I have the training director here, to submit it to APA for approval. And with that, then we would need a site visit, and it would probably close to another year before the people come out and approve us. The problem we're having though is in order to do a site visit, you need interns at the facility so they could, interview them. Well, we don't have interns. So we are waiting to see whether do we have to wait a year? We've always had an internship program for the 21 years that I've been with the county. So we have everything on paper, we're good to go. And it's just kind of crossing off those check boxes. So we will see, and I would love to keep you informed of that. So again, we are part of the court system. And with all the work that we do, I think we are a good resource for the court, because if you were to outsource, for example, just the therapy hours at 716 hours, private practice rates for sure could range anywhere from $100 to $200 an hour. So I just picked a medium of 150. Just in the therapy services alone, it would cost the county over $107,000 to outsource just the therapy piece of it. And if you go on the next slide, if you take the evaluations, which is actually, the majority of what we do, that would, depending on the type of evaluations, that would run you anywhere from, typically $2,000 to $4,000 per evaluation, which could be anywhere from, $614,000 to over $1 million. Should the work be outsourced. But the problem isn't just the cost. It's not many people, you can't just pick up the phone and just ask any psychologist in the community to do this type of work, because this is forensic clinical psychologies, which are, very, very specialized. So, the work that we do, if you go on the next slide, and especially with, the interns who help us, it's actually very valuable monetarily, and then in terms of time efficiency for the court system. So we do about, 1.5, let's say, give and take, $1.5 million worth of work for the court system. Next slide. And then the value of interns specifically, they are on a stipend at about $27,000 each for a total of $54,000, but they do contribute to close to $300,000 of the workload for the diagnostic centers. So obtaining that APA accreditation in order to retain our interns is huge for us. So that is really the goal of this year for us. Next slide. So the challenges are, I do have 2 open staff positions that I'm not able to fill after 3 months of posting. Again, it's a very kind of rare breed, the forensic psychologist. And then the intern positions. I'm still looking. I do have 1 or 2 applicants that we're looking at and talking about, but we are currently understaffed, which is, results in continuations for the court system. But we are, constantly moving towards filling those open positions. And then I will take any questions and comments. I know I gave you a lot of information right now. It's a varied amount of work that we do, but I'm open to any questions or comments you have on the work that we do.
Madam Chair, Brown here.
Any questions or comments?
Yeah, Brown here.
Mr. Brown, go ahead.
Just one question, I think at this point, your inability to fill the positions, is that kind of related to what has already been discussed by the attorneys where we're maybe not paying as much as some of the other counties are?
That is absolutely one factor. We are not competitive when you look at the neighboring counties, and especially when you're dealing with people with doctorates. Most of the people here, including my current staff, we not only have a doctorate, and most of us have a master's or 2. Then we have, 1 or 2 licenses on top of that. So you're talking about a lot of education. And absolutely, our starting salary is the lowest when you look at other counties, and especially, Lake County, DuPage County, their starting salary is probably $30,000 higher than what we are offering. So yes, that is a huge factor for us. And, the cost of graduate school, it's minimally $200,000 minimally right now to get your doctorate.
Thank you.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you so much for your time. Okay, next item on our agenda is our circuit clerk. Ms. Barrero, good morning.
Sorry, my mic wasn't on. Good morning. Almost lunch, almost good afternoon. Everybody has my report in their packet. I just wanted to go over a couple of things to bring to their attention, that there are close to 18,000 cases scheduled for court through Kane County, through the circuit clerk's office. And to date, the staff has entered 6185 criminal cases, 1,500 civil cases, and 523 family cases. That's just for 21. Again, we are working on initiatives to recover some of our losses due to COVID. And one would be sending out multiple notices for people to pay their fines and fees rather than sending them to collections immediately. We also have purchased, not exactly purchased, received a ballot box from the county clerk's office. If you could go to the last slide on my report, the last page on my report, I think there's a picture of it. If not, I'll have one next month. But we do have one of the ballot boxes that the county clerk's office had an extra one, and we had it wrapped with the circuit clerk information, and it is for folks to pay their fines and fees without having to come into our office. It's another COVID initiative, along with the fact that a lot of folks, their jobs do not allow them to get to our office from 8 to 5. So this is something that I've been working on, and I'm very proud that we finally got it going. Now we just have to work on the security camera for it. We are working on upgrading our security cameras outside of our building, and we do have a cost of about $5,000 for that. If we do for the whole building and change a few things for the whole, both addresses, 530 and 540 Randall, because we do have different addresses, the branch court and the circuit clerk's address, then the cost will be close to $30,000. So I know that the county clerk is working on a grant for that, and I'm hoping to hire a grant writer that can help us with grants going forward also. But this is a really strong need that the citizens of Kane County need, and this will be a great way to recoup some funds. Another thing that the chief judge talked about a little bit earlier is, for one thing, I appreciate the chief judge more than I could ever say. He has never said no. So far, he's not said no, but he understands the needs for the circuit clerk's office, and he understands the employee needs for the circuit clerk's office. And you can't run an office without good morale. And if we don't have sufficient and efficient equipment and a building, then you don't have efficient employees. So this is a really strong advocate with the chief judge, and I totally appreciate it. We have been trying to implement the new Tyler Odyssey program, and that has been kind of a struggle, not on anyone's fault. It's just that it's a huge program. And I have lost nights sleeping about it, because I like to talk, as Mike Kenyon will attest to. And then I'm worried that, what did I do? Because I'm really hoping that this thing works out. We paid millions of dollars for this, and it should work out. That's what they have promised other counties. So fingers crossed that we can get it working, because the judicial partners all need this working. And if we can't, if IT and Tyler can't get it working, then we can't get it working, then they can't. So it ties up the whole court system, and it's really, really important that this works correctly. My staff has earned apparently awards for their ecosystem that they had created years ago, and IT is recreating it for our system. And that's another project that we're trying. So as of April 5th, we're going to be opening the courts. We're going to start our new computer system. We're going to start Echo, the other computer system. And there's a new records manual that we all have to get adapted to for 2022. So this is a big year for the circuit clerk's office, and a lot is riding on it, and our hopes and that it will all be done pretty smoothly, we hope, because if one fails, the other one will. So fingers crossed on that. There's a couple things that have happened to our building. One is our back awning ripped due to all the snow that we received this year. I have to get that repaired. I sent out a memo to the Chairman Molina and the Chairman of the board, and we do need it repaired. The costs range from $7,000 to $29,000. There is nothing, there's not a no here. It has to be done. It goes over my employee's entrance. A lot of times they're carrying a lot of documents in and out of there, so that we do need that repaired. Thank God it did rip with the snow falling through without anybody underneath it. Otherwise, we would have had somebody injured. So that's one thing. I invite everyone over to take a walk through our employee area and see our carpet. The carpet has not been cleaned since they opened the building, and it is pretty disgusting. With COVID, I would have thought that would have been something we could get paid for through COVID, was to get that carpet cleaned. But I am in fear that once they clean it, all those stains that already look great will just be enhanced, because that's usually what happens once you clean a carpet. So I'm also now looking at getting the carpet replaced. So these are a lot of things that, like Commissioner Leonard said, are needs, not wants. I again invite everybody over to take a look. I feel like the coroner. I remember when I was on this committee and the coroner kept coming to you folks, inviting you to come and look at his issues, and it took 8 years. So I'm hoping this will not take 8 years to get repaired. But if you look at go back again to our last page on our report, which I do want to redo this report. So if anybody has any things that they want me to bring forward or discuss that are not in our report, please let me know and we can add them to the report. But go back one slide. Okay, this is our awning. See the circle? That was where the snow, that's right, you open the door, there it is. That's where it's pouring in when it rains. You can see those are other pictures of the awning there that's necessary. Now the next slide is, these are all the stamps that have been collected from previous circuit clerks, and we're trying to figure out how to destroy them because you can't just throw them away. They do have seals on, the county seal on them, or circuit seal on them. They do have names on them of individuals, so we can't just toss them. So we're trying to look for an answer as to what we can do with all these. I wish Jennifer Jarlin was here, but this is just a small sample of what was piling up in Karen's office, and we had to move to another cubicle. It's about a 6x6 cubicle filled with stamps. So it's a lot, and that's just some of the things that we're trying to take care of at the circuit clerk's office to try and beautify our area, in addition to having the carpet cleaned. I believe that's all I have. So if anybody has any questions.
Ms. Barrero, Madam Chair, may I ask Ms. Barrero a question? I'm going to assume it's okay.
She left.
You know, I just wanted to mention that there may be a possibility of filing an insurance claim on the awning since it was sudden and/or accidental. So you may want to look into that.
Ooh, nice to know. Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sorry, I must have been muted. Yes, and I think Chairman Caius is on as well, and we'll be happy to work with administration and get that on the books to get repaired. And I think regarding your carpet replacement or cleaning should also be on the books through administration. So we'll work on that after this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman. Hello, Chairman Molina.
Yes, Mr. Russell?
Yes, I have one suggestion with the stamps is that we purchased a incinerator with the sheriff about 6 months ago. And there may be a way, and again, I don't know if these can be burned, incinerated, but there may be a way to use it for that. Crazy enough, the thing that's the hardest to burn is paper. Because when it's in stacks, it doesn't burn very well, but maybe this, because it's plastic and or whatever, it's composite or whatever, maybe it'll burn. So we may have a solution for them. I don't know. I can't commit to that because I don't know if it's, something we can burn or not, but I definitely would look into it.
Thank you. I did, I think that's what they have done previously, was somebody took it to an incinerator, but I don't know with all the EPA rules now if we can do that again. But thank you very much. I will look into it and get a hold of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barrero. Okay,
Davis with question or comment?
Okay, if we can keep them short, it's almost 11:30 and I think some people are hungry. Go ahead, Mr. Davis.
Yes, I'll agree. I would concur with Teresa. Please come talk to us at admin for some of these things. And I was curious, the Dropbox, that's great that they found an extra one. Did you have a chance to speak with building management, with Mr. Allen at all about the night deposit concept, which would be more secure and not require anybody going outside?
Yes, I did, but then we would have to have a hole put in our wall because the glass is not large enough in the front. So that idea did not work. It would cost more to put a hole in the wall than it did for this box, which was about close to $600 to have it wrapped. So that idea would not work, but it was a good idea.
There you go.
I thought Mr. Davis was going to ask if you looked inside to see if there were any ballots.
Well, the funny thing is it's a very large box, as you know. So when we saw the large basket, we were thinking, oh, I hope we at least get one payment in there. But we will check it daily just in case somebody decides to put a ballot in there.
This is not a facetious question, but to follow up, I know that around the metropolitan area, there were people who apparently didn't look carefully at what looked like a box and a ballot box, and they were putting ballots in drop boxes for payments and other things like that. You know, if you're coming in the middle of the night or something and you want to drop something off, you would hate to discover you put it in the trash or the fine box instead.
Well, we have it wrapped. I will have pictures at the next meeting. We do have it, signs wrapped on it to state what it is. It's pretty hard to not know what it is. It does say payment box, cash only, all around it. So hopefully, and we will have it monitored. We are having a security camera put in monitoring it 24/7. And then we do have, the employees, of course, will check the box periodically throughout the day because the goal was to not leave anything in it just in case somebody got a wild idea. But it's really hard to put anything in it other than an envelope. But yeah, we will check it regularly.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so moving on our agenda, our Juvenile Justice Center, Mr. Davis.
Good morning. I won't keep you any longer. I sent a newsletter recently to update everyone on what's going on in our building. My report's on file. If anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you.
Okay, I don't hear or see any questions at this time. Thank you, Mr. Davis. Okay, moving on to our Merit Commission. Do we have anyone here from Merit Commission?
She's out celebrating her new reappointment.
Okay. Okay, so we will go ahead and I believe the report is on file and we'll move on to our coroner. Mr. Russell, thank you.
Yes, hi, everyone. Good morning. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. I just wanted to, first of all, look at the monthly reports. As you can see, our numbers, our total numbers continue to grow. You know, and most of them, obviously, can you hear me? Sorry, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure. You know, sometimes we look at these numbers and reality sometimes doesn't follow our expectations. You know, in this case, with the COVID deaths, obviously, and the opiate deaths, it followed our expectations. But, you know, interestingly enough, our suicides went down a couple, which I find a little weird. But again, the number that we're looking at, we're just presenting data. You know, I want to present this data, and then whoever can look at that data and try to decipher, you know, what's going on. But I assure you, every single one of these stats has been scrubbed multiple times to make sure that it was exactly what we claim it is. So last month we talked about the types of deaths and the increases. And our natural deaths in 2020, from 2019 to 2020, went up 793 deaths. Now, of those, 626 were COVID deaths, but an additional 167 of those deaths were everything else. And what I mean by everything else is cancer, myocardial infarction, atherosclerosis, pulmonary embolism, any natural type of death. So we had an additional almost 200 type of natural deaths, you know, above and beyond COVID. Accidental deaths went up 10. Obviously, the opioids last year was at 70. The previous year was at 55. So we're up 15 deaths from the previous year. And interestingly enough, like I said, everything else, which includes accidental, would be car crashes, somebody trips and falls out of a tree, industrial accidents, things like that. They actually went down by 5. So homicides went down by 4, but that was 2019. We had the Aurora shootings, which was 6 deaths, you know, in one day. So, and again, our suicides actually went down by 3 from 2019 to 2020, which part of me says that just doesn't compute because of all the information that we hear coming out about people being at home from COVID and the depression, you know, type of things. And we don't know. Maybe that not chapter of the novel hasn't been written yet. We don't know what 2021 is going to bring. But I've also included, I don't know if Blair got it or not this morning. Early, I sent him a graph. There it is. Absolutely. I thought this was very interesting. You know, and again, this is just the numbers. We have scrubbed these numbers, looked at every death certificate, because the thing people don't understand is that our numbers don't just happen within a week. I mean, when you talk about a certain type of death, it may take, weeks to months before we actually have an actual cause, because we're waiting on toxicologies, we're waiting on the forensic pathologist report, we're waiting on medical records, we're waiting on these things. So we're a couple months, typically a couple months out of finishing at least a couple months, finishing out a type of a death. So obviously we're in March now. So last year we were able to, scrub all of those numbers that we had. And basically this is a line graph representing each week since March 23rd of 2020 last year, and the number of deaths. And I also put in the holidays because I thought that was a big thing that people keep talking about, is gatherings and whatnot. So I thought, well, we'll look at that and see if that shows some kind of relevance and or causation or whatnot. But so as you can see, sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So again, I have no statement, as far as why or how or that kind of thing. These are just the numbers and where they were at week by week. So I thought this would be something really good for you all to study, look over. I am going to publish these, through a press release and whatnot, but I wanted to make sure you guys saw them first. And I just thought it was very, very interesting to look at the year and the number of deaths and where the peaks and the valleys occurred. So that's basically all I have. Does anybody have any questions?
Madam
Thank you,
Chair,
Coroner
question,
Russell.
Shepro?
Yes, Mr. Shepro.
Rob, on that graph, do you have an opinion about what the expected time lag would be between the holiday and seeing it reflected in the death total? Is it 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month?
Well, typically what we've been told is it's about a 2-week lag, 2 to 3 weeks. Someone contacts the disease, and some people hang on for a while. But as far as we know, the general consensus is that if you're susceptible to the disease, you catch the disease. We've had people die 5 days from the start of the symptoms. Some people have hung on for a while and wind up passing away later. Just keep fighting in the hospital. But I think as far as an actual timeline, I think that 2 weeks is probably a good, 2 to 3 weeks is probably a good median type of time frame from when someone contacts the disease to when they pass.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepro. Any further questions or comments for our coroner?
Davis, quick question for Rob.
Go ahead.
Rob, as we were working on the new facility, we had some discussions about the possibility of bringing a lab to Kane County, because one of your biggest wait times and bottlenecks are the toxicology results in the space that's become available. Is that still a feasible discussion to have moving forward?
I mean, it is. I've kind of put it into NMS's lab. That's our lab. And we've still, and then COVID hit, of course.
Right.
So we're still in discussion, I guess is the right way to say. We just have
that's fine. For today, I just wanted to know if it was still something that we could discuss in the future, and I can call you about that.
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further questions for our coroner, let's go ahead and move on to the next agenda item, which is new business. Any new business anyone would like to bring forward to the committee that we haven't discussed? Okay, hearing and seeing none. I'd like to entertain a motion to place written reports on file.
So
moved by Davis.
Okay, Mr. Davis moves, Mr. Shepro seconds.
We're all awake now.
Any comments or questions? Okay.
Oh, I vote yes too.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Brown,
Yes.
Gums,
Yes.
Leonard,
Leonard, yes.
Sanchez, Shepro,
Yes, Shepro, yes.
Davis.
Davis, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Reports have been placed on file. And let's see, I don't see any need for executive session today. I'd just like to thank everybody. There's a lot of good work coming out of this committee, and I appreciate all of the time and effort of all of our partners and the example that our partners are showing with their interest in working together to help solve the needs of our community. So I will go ahead, I will go ahead and entertain a motion to adjourn until our next month's meeting.
Come on, quick.
Brown moves.
Moved by Davis.
Mr. Brown moves, Mr. Davis seconds. And all voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.